And I remember the feeling walking back home. I mean, I was shell-shocked. That was a hell of a bollocking. Everybody's different. Now there's an obvious statement to start with. But I'm thinking specifically that we all grow up at different rates too. Some of us are quite mature when we're still in school. Others, it can take a lot longer to become, I think, even a basic functioning adult. I remember in school, I remember one lad. I mean, I think you can grow up a little too early. He was the brother of a friend of mine, and he was one of the most boring people I ever met. He was a child, and I mean like quite a young child, maybe, just to think of an example, he's not 11, 12 years old, and I saw his bedroom when I was visiting his brother, and he had no toys in his bedroom. And I was only a couple of years older, and I'm looking and thinking, oh, this was the 80s, so I'm thinking, where's all the Transformers, where's the G.I. Joe, where's the Lego, the Star Wars action figures, the Commodore 64, where is it all? There's nothing, there was nothing in there. It was like his bed, a wardrobe, chest of drawers. His bedside table had just a clock on it. It was weird. He was weird, to be honest. And he grew up, again, we worked together for years in the same factory. The most boring person you could ever hope to meet. Had nothing to say about anything. No opinions, no sense of humour, dull as ditch water. I haven't seen him for years, I don't know what happened to him. Perhaps he eventually died of boredom and turned into stone or dust or something. Anyway, point is, I think you can grow up a little too early, as it seemed to me at the time he had done, or in my case, it takes you too long. It did, because I remember I was 16, and here in Britain, back in, when would this have been, 1990, my time in compulsory education was coming to an end, and talking to my classmates, and there was a mix of opinions and plans and ambitions and ideas about what the next step was. Some were clear. They wanted to go to sixth form because they wanted to do their A-levels, go get to university, and go do whatever it was they wanted to do there. Others still were, I can't wait to get out of school, go get a job, drive a car, smoke cigarettes, drink in pubs, and all the other things that seem terribly important and prestigious when you're that age, back in those days anyway. It was more of a feeling than a certain fact that I wasn't ready to be making these decisions. I still had no real idea of what I wanted to do. I did not feel at all ready for the adult world. All I knew was I wanted to avoid it, and so I decided to go to sixth form to do my A-levels. But not because I wanted to do A-levels, not because I wanted to get better educated. I just wanted to keep hiding from the adult world. And that's what I did, and I think it was, it would have been September 91. We went to sixth form. And when I think back to those days, it's a mixture of feelings. I'm ambivalent about it. On the one hand, that was and remains a tremendously exciting time of life where you're entering the adult world and suddenly you're gaining all this freedom, and the world is your oyster, so it seems. The world was full of possibilities. It was exciting, but also I was spectacularly clueless about myself. It's like my character, my personality, which had been reasonably consistent and coherent throughout my childhood, blew up, and now it was all over the place. I didn't know what or who I was, and I was just walking along whatever path was in front of me, not knowing where it was going and not knowing how to change direction. Not wanting to get too metaphorical here, of course. I was basically just hiding from the adult world, and I look back now and that is a regret, because I think, well, you can run but you can't hide. In retrospect, I would have done things differently. I think I probably would have been better off leaving school, getting a job and training, and basically, more or less, I could have done anything. Long story short, I could have done more or less anything else, and it would have been a better decision than I made. Short of drug running or something. So 2 years I spent studying, in inverted commas, my A-levels. But I wasn't taking them seriously, because that wasn't the point. I was just kicking the can down the road. I thought, right, I'll go do my A-levels, I'll be 18 before I've got to think about this again. And when you're 16, 18 feels like a million years in the future. But even at that young age, 2 years goes by quite quickly. And then, where were we now? Summer 93, I was in the same position that I had been 2 years earlier. I still did not feel ready for the outside world. I was still very immature for my age. And there wasn't really anyone around me pushing me in that direction, which is not to blame other people for the poor choices I've made. I mean, I don't do that. It's my life, these are my calls, but I think if somebody had been there and said, go get a job, you've got to pay rent, got to do this, got to do that, I would have done it, and would have been better off as a result. But so anyway, yeah. So here I was. We were coming to the end of our second year in the A-levels, and I was staring real life, adult life in the face. Oh no, what can I do? God forbid I should just go out and deal with it. So I thought, and a plan began to evolve in my head. Because in our second year in A-level, there were two other people who had been in the year above me in school, who had also done their A-levels and should already have been in university by that point, but had failed their A-levels and came back for a year to resit them to get the grades they needed to get on the university courses that they wanted. You could practically hear the light bulb ding above my head. I know, I thought, I'll deliberately fail my A-levels and then I can come back for a year. And that's another year with the can kicked down the road. A plan of such idiocy that I think perfectly illustrates just how clueless and ill-prepared for adult decision-making I actually was. Well, that's what I did. What A-levels did I do even? I can't remember. Oh, that's right. Oh, man. Politics and economics. No point asking what I was planning to do with them, because, of course, as I've said, I wasn't planning to do anything with them. They were a means to an end in themselves. So I went into the exams, and I don't get me wrong, I am utterly ashamed of this. It's embarrassing, and so it should be. But I deliberately failed those exams, and I thought, okay, right. August it was, I think we get the results back, and they were, pants. I thought, right, okay, great. I'll rock up to the school. When we go there to register for A-levels and what have you. And Bob's your uncle for another year. However, it wasn't going to be quite that simple. You see, our old headmaster, he was a traditional headmaster. I mean, even by the standards of 30 odd years ago. He wore a gown, one of those cape things they were. He had been alerted to me and wanting to come back because it was unusual. This didn't normally happen. Only 2 people who'd done it the year before. So he saw my case, he looked at it, and he said he needed to speak to me personally first before anything else. So I saunter into the school, cocky, thinking, oh great, sign on the dotted line, I'm good for another year. But the headmaster, he knew exactly what I was playing at. Obvious he'd met idiots like me before. Walked into his office in the school, and it was in this old secondary modern building built in the 30s, and there was like a bit right at the top, 3 floors, drafty, foreboding place, glazed brick. And I sat in there and he looked at me. Well, I mean, if looks could kill. And he absolutely tore a strip into me. He made it quite clear. He knew exactly what I was playing at. He thought, he said, I know what you're doing. You think you can come here and arse about. Didn't use the word arse, but that's what he meant. For another year, take it easy. That's what you want to do, isn't it? And I was sitting there shell-shocked, this 18-year-old muppet. And he laid down the law. He said, if you're coming back, you're in here every day, or you're out. You miss a single lesson, you're out, etc., etc. I think, again, with the benefit of hindsight, you should have said, I know what you're up to, lad. You get out of here, you go grow up. I think he only let me back in, of course, because the school gets extra funding for every pupil they have on their books. So that's the only reason he let me in, I think. But he did, and told me to bugger off. Speaking to him again, didn't use the word bugger, but that's what he meant. And I walked back home, and I remember the feeling walking back home. I mean, I was shell-shocked. That was a hell of a bollocking. But when all was said and done, I got what I wanted. So I did get what I wanted. I didn't get what I needed. And I came back for another year, which of course was a waste of time, because I wasn't taking it seriously. I turned up knowing I get kicked out, attended the lessons, but I was phoning it in. And in the summer of '94, that was that. There was no more. There were no more places left to hide. I could have gone to university, but that's not like being in school. Because one thing about me is that I am a creature of routine. One thing I've only recently learned about myself. Back then, I would have hated the idea. It sounds so boring and stultifying. But I am. I liked the routine. Going to university for me would have been at least as much of a disruption as just going out and getting a job, or more so, which you usually move away. So I didn't want to do that. And I never did physically go to university. I did years later study for a degree in English language and literature with the Open University, studying from home, whilst simultaneously working full-time in a furniture factory and raising a baby. He was a baby at the time. But I did that years later. But anyway, yeah, that was then. 94, I had no idea. I left school. Like a lot of people my age, I look back on the 90s as a golden age, and in some ways it was, but really it was a, I screwed it up in terms of my personal life. I was finally kicked out of school in 94, and then in and out of dead-end jobs throughout the rest of the 90s, missed opportunities, and didn't take myself seriously. It wasn't until about 2002, 2003 that I actually sort of started taking life seriously and began properly engaging and acting like an adult, by which time I was nearly 30. What's the moral of this story then? Whether you like it or not, the time comes when you must put away childish things. and start behaving like an adult. And any attempt to delay that is just going to make this life worse for you. Go out there, get a job. That's very important. Not just for money, but to give you a sense of responsibility, to give you a work ethic. And you'll find after that usually the other things will follow. They'll take care of themselves. Do not drift, as I did, and wait for the world to deliver what you think it owes you. The thing about twigs riding on the backs of mighty rivers is that a lot of them just end up getting stuck in the bramble on the side of the riverbank. They never really go anywhere. Take control. Don't be like surlydad. Now, this is not a lecture. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm just telling you how I live my life. Since you asked.